in Part B, based on your calculation performed in Part A, discuss whether OCS would benefit from adopting an activity-based costing system. Support your discussion with calculations where necessary. And you can see then there's also 1 mark available for communication skills, and that is awarded for clarity of expression. All right, so let's go back to Part A where we performed our calculation, because your discussion over here must be based on the calculation that we performed in Part A. So let's go and have a look at what we did in Part A. We calculated the product cost per unit over here, and because the company uses absorption costing, we included both variable and fixed manufacturing costs in this calculation. So you can see there's the fixed manufacturing cost over there. And when we included this fixed manufacturing overhead in the calculation, we were using traditional costing. We only calculated one rate, one allocation rate. We got that rate per machine hour, and we only had one cost driver. We didn't look for a cause and effect relationship. We just used an arbitrary basis, being machine hours, to allocate the fixed manufacturing overhead to the 2 different products. So remember, that's overly simplistic. If we want to cost these products more accurately, we could use activity-based costing. And what we would do with activity-based costing is, instead of just calculating one allocation rate, we would break the overhead down into the various different components that it's made up of, and we would calculate many different activity rates. And when we calculate those activity rates, we look for cost drivers where there's a cause and effect relationship. We don't just use an arbitrary measure like machine hours. So we actually look for a cause and effect relationship. And the product that causes the cost should be allocated more of the cost. So by using activity-based costing, products are costed more accurately than what they would be if traditional costing is used. However, the problem with activity-based costing is it's very expensive to implement. So companies should only implement activity-based costing if the benefits are expected to exceed the cost. So they need to do a cost-benefit analysis, and they should only implement activity-based costing if the benefits exceed the cost. So that's what we need to look at over here for OCS. Should they implement activity-based costing? Will it be worth their while? And what you needed to identify here, guys, is you can see that these fixed manufacturing overheads over here are a very small percentage of the total product cost per unit. The vast majority of the product costs actually comprise of variable costs. So because the fixed manufacturing overhead is so insignificant, even if this cost isn't accurately allocated between the 2 products, it's very unlikely that it's going to result in product costing distortions because it's so insignificant. Now remember, if we go back to the required, you need to support your discussion with calculations where necessary. So the calculation that I want you to perform is calculate what these fixed costs are as a percentage of total product costs. We can then see how insignificant they are. So if we jump to the suggested solution, first, here's your calculation up front. You're going to calculate the fixed manufacturing overheads as a percentage of total product costs. And you can see for the executive chair, the fixed manufacturing overhead is less than 6% of the total product cost. And for the classic chair, it's less than 14% of the total product cost. Now remember, you can't just perform calculations. This is a discussion question, and you are just supporting your discussion with calculations. So what is the discussion that we are looking for over here? The fixed manufacturing overheads are a very small percentage of the total product cost. All right, that's the whole reason why we performed the calculation, to prove that they are insignificant. They are a very small percentage of the total product cost. Now you can see here, guys, I have also included an alternative for you. So instead of calculating the fixed overhead as a percentage of total product cost, you can calculate the variable costs as a percentage of total product cost, so that you can see the vast majority of the total product cost is variable costs. So obviously that tells us exactly the same thing. So either you perform one calculation or the other. Either you calculate the fixed manufacturing overheads as a percentage of total product costs, or you calculate your variable manufacturing costs as a percentage of total product costs. Both of these tell us that the fixed manufacturing overheads are insignificant because they are a small percentage of total product costs, or we also know that because the variable manufacturing costs make up the vast majority of the total product cost. All right, so one or the other. All right, then if we look at the rest of the discussion over here, I have already been through all of this with you, so I'm just making sure that we actually just cover it and you're happy with everything. But what we said is because the fixed manufacturing overhead is such a small percentage of the total product cost, it is highly unlikely that significant product cost distortions will arise if we use traditional costing instead of activity-based costing to allocate the fixed manufacturing overhead to products. So then make sure that you always have a conclusion, actually answer what you are being asked. Should they implement activity-based costing? Will they benefit from implementing activity-based costing? No, they should not implement activity-based costing, as the cost of implementation will outweigh the benefits. All right, so that's what I was looking for in part B of the required.